I waited 2 weeks. 2 weeks of watching Marcus fumble through strategy meetings, of correcting his miscalculations on the quarterly forecast, of seeing him take credit for initiatives I'd started months earlier. I documented everything meticulously. Every mistake, every moment of confusion, every time he turned to me for guidance he should have possessed himself. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The first major incident happened during a client presentation with Cascade Technologies, our biggest account worth $3.2 million annually. Marcus had prepared the slides himself, insisting he needed to take ownership of the relationship. I watched from the back of the conference room as he mispronounced the client's CEO's name, confused their competitor data with another company's metrics, and promised deliverables that weren't possible within their budget constraints. "So you're saying you can increase our brand awareness by 200% while cutting our budget by 30%? Asked Cascade's marketing director, Rebecca Foster, her eyebrows raised in skepticism. Marcus nodded confidently. Absolutely. It's all about efficiency and leveraging synergies. Synergies. A word he'd clearly learned in business school but didn't understand how to apply. I had to step in during the Q&A session, smoothly correcting his errors while making it look like clarification rather than damage control. What Marcus means is that we can optimize your current spend to achieve better results within your existing budget parameters, with a realistic target of 15 to 20% improvement in brand awareness metrics. After the clients left, Marcus pulled me aside. "Thanks for jumping in back there," he said, loosening his tie. "I was having an off day. Food poisoning, I think. An off day." As if competence was something that came and went like the weather. I nodded and smiled, but internally I was adding this incident to my growing documentation file. The second incident was worse. Marcus had been tasked with presenting our quarterly results to the board of directors. I'd prepared the analysis, created the visualizations, and outlined the key talking points. All he had to do was deliver the information confidently. Instead, he froze when board member Catherine Rodriguez asked about attribution modeling for the Portland campaign. He literally looked at me across the room and said, "Sarah, you want to field this one? You know the technical stuff better." In front of the entire board. The man who'd been promoted for his leadership presence was publicly deferring to his supposed subordinate on the work that had earned him his position. I answered the question flawlessly, explaining the multi-touch attribution model I'd developed and how it had improved our ROI tracking by 340%. The board members nodded appreciatively, taking notes. Catherine even asked for a follow-up meeting to discuss implementing the model company-wide. "Impressive work, Sarah," said board chairman Robert Kim after the presentation. "This kind of innovation is exactly what we need more of." Marcus smiled and took credit with a gracious nod, as if he'd been the mastermind behind my technical expertise. After the board left, I overheard Patricia in the hallway speaking with Tom Reynolds. "We might need to provide Marcus with some additional executive coaching," she said quietly. "He's still adjusting to the senior level responsibilities." Adjusting. That's what she called incompetence now, but the final straw came during our largest client pitch of the quarter. Northwest Financial Group was considering a complete rebrand, worth potentially $8 million over 2 years. I'd spent 3 weeks developing a comprehensive strategy that addressed their outdated brand perception, proposed a phased rollout plan, and included detailed ROI projections based on similar rebrands I'd researched. Marcus insisted on leading the presentation, even though he'd barely reviewed the materials. I'd sent him the deck 5 times, scheduled 3 prep sessions that he'd cancelled, and even offered to do a practice run the morning of the presentation. He'd waved me off, saying he worked better under pressure and that his natural presentation style was more effective than over-preparation. I watched in horror as he confused their brand values with those of a competitor, suggested strategies that directly contradicted their stated goals, and when asked about implementation timelines, he gave dates that were literally impossible to meet. "You're suggesting we complete a full brand identity redesign, website overhaul, and marketing campaign launch in 6 weeks?" asked Northwest Financial CMO, Rebecca Walsh, her voice incredulous. "Well, when you have the right team and the right energy, anything's possible," Marcus replied with his trademark confident smile. The silence in the room was deafening. Northwest Financial's entire leadership team exchanged glances that clearly communicated their growing concern about our company's competence. Rebecca Walsh looked confused and slightly insulted. "I'm sorry," Rebecca said finally, "but I think there might be some confusion about our objectives. The strategy you've outlined seems to be for a completely different type of company. We specifically mentioned that we're a conservative financial institution that values stability and trustworthiness. Your proposal suggests tactics that would be more appropriate for a tech startup." I couldn't let it happen. Not again. This was an $8 million contract, the largest potential deal our division had ever pursued. If I may, I interjected, standing up smoothly. I think what Marcus is outlining is one potential approach, but let me present the customized strategy we've actually developed specifically for Northwest Financial. For the next 30 minutes, I delivered the presentation I'd crafted, addressing each of their pain points, demonstrating clear understanding of their conservative market position, and outlining realistic timelines with measurable milestones. I showed them case studies of successful financial services rebrands that had maintained customer trust while modernizing their image. I watched Rebecca's expression shift from confusion to interest to genuine excitement. Now this, she said when I finished, this is exactly what we're looking for. Sarah, was it? This strategy shows real insight into our challenges and the financial services industry as a whole. We won the account. An $8 million contract signed because I'd salvaged Marcus's disaster of a presentation. Afterward, Patricia called me into her office. That was excellent work today, Sarah, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. You really supported Marcus well during that presentation. Supported. I'd single-handedly saved our biggest deal of the year, and she called it support. Marcus mentioned. He was feeling a bit under the weather, she continued. Food poisoning or something. That's why he seemed off his game. But you stepped up beautifully. Food poisoning. The official story to explain away complete incompetence. I wondered how many food poisoning incidents Marcus would need before Patricia acknowledged the pattern. I documented everything. The mispronounced names, the confused data, the impossible timelines, the public deferrals to me during board meetings. I created a detailed timeline showing how every major success during Marcus's tenure had required my direct intervention or had been based on work I'd completed before his promotion. I also started reaching out to former colleagues who'd left the company, particularly women who'd been passed over for promotions. The stories I heard were disturbingly similar, talented women whose contributions had been minimized, whose ideas had been credited to male colleagues, who'd been told they were not quite ready for leadership roles while less qualified men were fast-tracked to success. During my lunch breaks, I began consulting with employment attorney Diana Chen, no relation to Marcus, thankfully. She reviewed my documentation and listened to excerpts from the recording with growing interest. This is one of the clearest cases of gender discrimination I've seen, she told me during our third meeting. The recording alone is damning, but combined with the performance documentation and the pattern of incidents since the promotion, you have an extremely strong case. What are my options? I asked. Several. We could file a discrimination complaint with the EEOC, pursue a lawsuit for damages, or approach the company directly with the evidence and negotiate a settlement. Given the strength of your case, they'd likely want to settle quickly and quietly. And if I decide to stay and fight for change from within? Diana smiled. That's riskier, but potentially more impactful. If you can document ongoing discrimination and build a coalition of similarly affected employees, you might be able to force systemic changes. Though you'd need to be very strategic about timing and approach. On a rainy Thursday morning, exactly 2 weeks after Marcus's promotion, I requested a meeting with HR Director Linda Vasquez. I'd worked with Linda on several policy reviews and knew her reputation for thoroughness and fairness. She'd been with the company for 12 years and had a no-nonsense approach to workplace issues. I have something I need to report, I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. It concerns the recent promotion decision and potential discrimination. Linda's expression grew serious. She closed her laptop and gave me her full attention. What kind of discrimination, Sarah? I placed my phone on her desk and played the recording. Patricia's voice filled the small office, each word landing with devastating clarity. Linda's face went through several expressions: surprise, concern, and finally, barely contained anger. We need someone who looks like leadership material, and that's just not Sarah. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off, asterisk. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Linda paused the recording and looked at me with something approaching awe. Sarah, do you understand what you've just shown me? A clear case of gender discrimination, I replied calmly. When was this recorded? Linda asked, her voice carefully controlled. 2 weeks ago. The night of the promotion announcement. I slid a folder across her desk. These are my performance metrics compared to Marcus's, along with documentation of incidents since his promotion where he's required significant guidance on basic responsibilities. There's also detailed analysis of the 3 major accounts I've had to save since he took over. Linda reviewed the documents in silence, occasionally glancing back at my phone where the recording had finished playing. She took notes as she read. her expression growing more serious with each page. "The Cascade Technologies presentation," she said, looking up. "I heard there were some issues, but the official report said it went smoothly." "It went smoothly because I intervened to correct multiple factual errors Marcus had made. The clients were ready to walk out before I stepped in." "And Northwest Financial?" "An $8 million contract that we only won because I essentially delivered a completely different presentation than the one Marcus had prepared. He'd confused their objectives with those of a tech startup." Linda set down the papers and leaned back in her chair. "Sarah, this is a substantial amount of documentation. How long have you been compiling this?" "The performance comparisons I've been tracking all along, it's part of my regular work habits. The incident documentation began after the promotion was announced. I wanted to be thorough. I wanted to make sure this wasn't about sour grapes or personal disappointment. The numbers speak for themselves." Linda nodded slowly. "And you're certain about the authenticity of this recording?" "Completely. I can provide the original file, with metadata showing when and where it was recorded. I also have backup copies stored in multiple locations." "Why did you wait 2 weeks to bring this forward?" I met her eyes directly. "Because I wanted to give Marcus a fair chance to prove himself in the role. I hoped that maybe Patricia's reasoning, however flawed, might somehow be validated by his performance. Instead, I've watched him struggle with basic responsibilities while I've been forced to clean up increasingly serious mistakes. The Northwest Financial presentation was the final straw. I couldn't watch this company lose clients because someone was promoted based on their appearance rather than their abilities." Linda closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. "Sarah, what you're describing could constitute both gender discrimination and potentially a hostile work environment. The recording alone is quite damning. Combined with this performance documentation, we have a serious problem." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I need to ask, what outcome are you seeking here?" "I want the company to make decisions based on merit, not on who looks like leadership material. I want the promotion I earned through 3 years of exceptional performance. And I want assurance that other women in this company won't face the same discrimination I've experienced." Linda nodded. "I'm going to need to escalate this immediately. This requires involvement from both senior management and potentially our legal team. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny?" "I've been prepared for 3 years," I replied. "I've been building a case without even realizing it." "There's something else," Linda said, reaching for a different file on her desk. "You're not the first person to raise concerns about promotion practices in this company. I've had 3 other women approach me in the past year with similar complaints, though none had documentation as comprehensive as yours." My heart raced. "Who?" "I can't share names without their permission, but I think it's time we had a broader conversation about systematic issues rather than isolated incidents." That afternoon, Linda called an emergency meeting with Patricia, Tom Reynolds, and General Counsel Michael Torres joining by video conference. I wasn't present, but I later learned that the 40-minute meeting had involved legal counsel reviewing company anti-discrimination policies in detail and Patricia being asked to explain her recorded comments, according to Tom, who called me. Later that evening, Patricia had initially tried to deny the authenticity of the recording, then claimed her words had been taken out of context, and finally attempted to argue that her decision had been based on strategic business considerations rather than discrimination. The legal counsel shut that down pretty quickly, Tom told me. Especially when Linda played the part about you not looking like leadership material. There's no context that makes that acceptable. By 4 p.m., Marcus was called into HR. The meeting lasted 2 hours. By 4:30, Patricia was escorted to her office to collect her belongings. Her termination was effective immediately, with the company citing violations of anti-discrimination policies and failure to maintain professional standards in personnel decisions. The next morning, Linda knocked on my cubicle with a different expression entirely, professional respect mixed with something that looked almost like awe. "The board of directors held an emergency meeting last night," she said. "They'd like to meet with you at 2 p.m. today. They're prepared to offer you the senior marketing manager position, along with a formal apology and additional compensation for the discrimination you experienced." I sat back in my chair, feeling a calm satisfaction settle over me. 3 years of work had finally been recognized, not through patient waiting, but through strategic action. What about Marcus? He'll be transitioning back to his previous role as marketing specialist, with additional training and oversight. The board agrees he wasn't ready for senior management. His performance over the past 2 weeks has been concerning. And the clients? Northwest Financial, Cascade Technologies? Linda smiled. They've specifically requested that you remain their primary point of contact. Rebecca Walsh from Northwest Financial called this morning asking if you'd be interested in expanding their contract. Apparently, she was very impressed with your presentation. There's one more thing, Linda continued. The board wants to conduct a comprehensive review of promotion and hiring practices company-wide. They're asking if you'd be willing to consult on developing new policies to prevent this kind of discrimination in the future. At 2:15 p.m., I shook hands with the board members and accepted not just the promotion I'd earned, but a 25% salary increase, a direct reporting line to the VP level, and a formal title, Senior Marketing Manager and Director of Strategic Accounts. The corner office came with a view of Elliott Bay and a door I could actually close. Board member Catherine Rodriguez pulled me aside after the meeting. Sarah, I want you to know that what you uncovered has prompted a company-wide review of our promotion and hiring practices. We're implementing new policies to ensure merit-based advancement and prevent this kind of discrimination. Your courage in speaking up is going to help a lot of people. We're also establishing a mentorship program specifically designed to support women's advancement in leadership roles, added Board Chairman Robert Kim. We'd like you to help design and lead that program if you're interested. 3 months later, the new policies were in place. Anonymous performance reviews, standardized promotion criteria, and mandatory bias training for all managers. The mentorship program I'd helped design was supporting 12 women across different departments. 6 months later, our Pacific Northwest division exceeded targets by 34%, the strongest performance in company history. The Portland campaign methodology I developed became the template for all regional campaigns nationwide. Marcus, to his credit, became one of my most reliable team members once he stopped trying to be something he wasn't ready for and focused on learning the skills he actually needed. The Northwest Financial contract expanded to $12 million over 3 years, and Rebecca Walsh recommended our services to 4 other companies in their network. Cascade Technologies renewed their contract early and increased their budget by 40%. I hired 3 new team members, all promoted based solely on performance metrics and demonstrated abilities. 2 of them were women who'd been overlooked for advancement in other departments, Jennifer from accounting, who turned out to have a brilliant mind for data analysis, and Rachel from design, whose creative strategy skills rivaled my own. The other 3 women who had approached Linda about discrimination issues came forward with their own documentation. 2 of them received promotions they'd been unfairly denied, and the third transferred to a different department where her skills were better appreciated. The recording stayed in my phone, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon is simply the truth, captured at exactly the right moment. And sometimes, patience isn't just a virtue, it's a strategy. But when patience stops serving justice, action becomes the only ethical choice. Patricia's replacement, Director Janet Kim, implemented quarterly performance reviews based on measurable outcomes rather than subjective assessments of leadership presence. She also established a policy requiring diverse interview panels for all senior positions and standardized questions focused on competency rather than cultural fit. The company's revenue increased by 18% that year, driven largely by retention of talent that might otherwise have left due to discriminatory practices. Employee satisfaction surveys showed significant improvement, particularly among women and minorities who reported feeling more valued and fairly treated. Diana Chen, the employment attorney I'd consulted, used our case as a template for helping other women navigate similar situations. She started offering workshops on documentation strategies and knowing your rights in the workplace. My sister finally got her celebration dinner, 6 months late but infinitely more meaningful. I always knew you'd get what you deserved, she said, raising her glass. But I'm even more proud that you made sure other women would too. What I deserved. For the first time in 3 years, those words felt true. The best part wasn't the promotion or the salary increase or even the satisfaction of seeing justice served. It was the email I received a year later from Jennifer in accounting, now Jennifer Martinez, Senior Data Analyst. Sarah, I just got promoted to department head. When I was sitting in that interview, answering questions about my actual qualifications instead of whether I fit the culture, I thought about you. Thank you for changing this place. Thank you for making it possible for the rest of us to succeed. Based on what we can do, not what we look like. That email was worth more than all the promotions in the world. Because sometimes, fighting for yourself means fighting for everyone who comes after you. And sometimes, the most important victory isn't the one you win for yourself, it's the one you win for women whose names you'll never know, whose battles you'll never see, but whose paths you've helped to clear. The conference room felt smaller when Marcus Chen's name left Director Patricia Wells' mouth. Senior Marketing Manager for the Pacific Northwest region. I watched him straighten his tie and flash that practiced grin he'd perfected during client presentations. 6 months ago, Marcus was asking me how to format pivot tables in our quarterly reports. The polite applause felt hollow. My hands stayed folded on the mahogany table while colleagues offered their congratulations. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, launching the Portland campaign that brought in $12 million, creating the customer retention program that became company standard. All leading to this moment where someone else's name got called. Patricia's voice cut through my thoughts. We'd also like to recognize Sarah Mitchell for her exceptional mentorship of Marcus over the past year. Her strategic insights have been invaluable to his development. Mentorship. The word tasted bitter. I forced a smile and nodded as more hollow applause filled the room. Marcus caught my eye across the table and mouthed, "Thank you." The sincerity in his expression almost made it worse. I remembered the late nights I'd spent fixing his presentations, the client calls where I'd jumped in to salvage deals he'd nearly lost with poor preparation. The time he'd taken full credit for my social media strategy during the quarterly review, while I sat silent in the back row. I'd told myself it was team collaboration. Now it felt like systematic theft. The memory of last month's disaster still stung. Marcus had presented his influencer marketing strategy to the executive team, a strategy I'd spent 2 months developing from scratch. He'd stumbled through the technical aspects, incorrectly explained ROI calculations, and when asked about budget allocation, he'd looked directly at me with pleading eyes. I'd saved him then, jumping in with the detailed breakdowns I'd memorized from countless late-night revisions. "Sarah's a real team player," he'd said afterward, that same grateful smile lighting up his face. "Couldn't have done it without her support." Support. Always support, never leadership. After the meeting, I retreated to my cubicle on the 7th floor. The gray fabric walls seemed to close in around me. My Stanford MBA hung on the partition wall, the same degree Marcus had, only I'd earned mine while working full-time and caring for my sick father during his final years. His came straight out of undergrad, funded by family money and summers at his father's law firm. The congratulations from coworkers felt like condolences. "You'll get the next one," Jennifer from accounting whispered as she passed, her eyes avoiding mine. But we both knew there wouldn't be a next one. Not here. Not for someone like me. Kevin from IT stopped by with a sympathetic look. "Total garbage, Sarah. Everyone knows you deserved it." Everyone except the people making decisions, apparently, Rachel from the design team lingered by my desk longer than the others. "Sarah, this is so wrong," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "I was in the bathroom yesterday when Patricia was on a call. She said something about needing someone with executive presence for client dinners and golf outings. Said you were brilliant but not quite the right cultural fit for senior leadership." Cultural fit. Another euphemism I'd heard before, usually applied to women who dared to aim higher than their assigned lanes. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. "How did it go? Are you celebrating tonight?" I stared at the message, unable to type the words that would shatter her excitement. She'd been telling everyone about her sister's big promotion for weeks. Our parents had even planned to drive up from Portland for a celebration dinner. Mom had already bought a congratulations card. I typed back, still waiting to hear final details. "We'll call you tonight." The lie felt necessary. I couldn't handle her disappointment on top of my own. My sister had always looked up to me as the trailblazer, the one who broke barriers in our family. She was starting her own career at a tech startup, and my success was supposed to prove that hard work and talent could overcome any obstacle. Another text came in, this one from my college roommate who worked in HR at a competing firm. "Heard through the grapevine. So proud of you. You've been working toward this for years." The irony was suffocating. I closed my laptop and walked to the break room, needing space to think. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh white. I poured coffee I didn't want and stared out the window at the Seattle skyline, watching the afternoon ferry cross Elliott Bay. The Space Needle stood proud against the gray sky, a symbol of innovation and progress, everything this company claimed to value but clearly didn't practice. My reflection in the window showed a woman who'd played by every rule, exceeded every expectation, and still lost to someone whose greatest qualification was looking the part. The woman staring back had tired eyes and shoulders that carried 3 years of unacknowledged brilliance. I thought about my grandmother's words when I'd started this job: "Excellence is its own reward, sweetheart." She'd been wrong. Excellence without the right packaging was just invisible labor. The break room door opened, and Tom Reynolds walked in. The VP of operations had always been fair to me, unlike Patricia. He poured coffee and stood beside me at the window. "Hell of an announcement today," he said carefully. "Congratulations are in order, I suppose," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Tom was quiet for a moment. "Sarah, can I speak frankly?" I nodded. "You got screwed," he said simply. "Your performance metrics are off the charts. The Portland campaign should have been a career maker. I argued for you in that meeting, but I was outvoted." "By who?" "Patricia." Had the board's ear. Said Marcus brought fresh perspective and natural leadership qualities. He shook his head. I've been in this business for 20 years. I know talent when I see it. This decision was politics, not merit. His honesty was both validating and devastating. At least one person in leadership saw the truth, even if he hadn't been able to change the outcome. What would you do in my position? I asked. Tom looked at me seriously. Document everything. Companies hate lawsuits, but they hate bad publicity even more. And Sarah? Start looking elsewhere. You're too good for this place. That evening, I called my sister back. She picked up on the first ring. So? Senior Marketing Manager Sarah Mitchell. I love the sound of that. I closed my eyes. Actually, I didn't get it. Silence. Then, what? But you said you were the obvious choice. Your boss even told you it was basically yours. They gave it to Marcus Chen. The guy who asks you for help with Excel? Her voice rose in disbelief. Sarah, that's insane. You've been carrying that department for years. I know. What are you going to do? I stared at my laptop screen, my mind already turning to possibilities I'd never seriously considered before. I'm going to make sure it never happens again. To me or anyone else. That evening, I stayed late reviewing quarterly performance metrics. The office had emptied out except for the cleaning crew and a few workaholics like myself. The numbers glowed on my monitor like accusations. Mine, 127% of target, highest client satisfaction scores, 0 budget overruns. Marcus, 89% of target, average satisfaction ratings, 2 projects over budget. The disparity was stark, undeniable. I pulled up the Portland campaign files, my baby from inception to execution. 18 months of research, market analysis, creative development, and flawless execution. The campaign had won 3 industry awards and been featured in Marketing Weekly as a case study. Marcus's name appeared nowhere in the original documentation. Yet somehow he'd presented it as collaborative work during his promotion interview. I was printing the comparison report when I heard voices from the conference room down the hall. The cleaning crew had finished this floor, leaving the hallway dimly lit except for the soft glow coming from the conference room. Patricia's voice carried clearly through the partially open door, along with someone else I couldn't identify immediately. Look. I know Sarah's numbers are stronger, Patricia was saying. But Marcus has that leadership presence. Clients respond to him differently. My hand froze on the printer. I moved closer to the door, my heels silent on the carpeted hallway. What do you mean differently? The second voice belonged to Tom Reynolds, our VP of Operations. His tone carried skepticism. Come on, Tom. You know what I mean. Sarah's brilliant, don't get me wrong. But when we're talking about representing the company at executive-level meetings, at industry conferences, Marcus just fits better. He's more executive material. Executive material, Tom repeated slowly. Patricia, that sounds dangerously close to, it's not personal. It's practical. The board notices these things. Having Marcus as the face of that division sends the right message about where we're headed as a company. Sarah's great for behind-the-scenes work, but Marcus has that natural command presence during presentations. My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering as I listened to my career being dissected like a biology specimen. What about her track record? Tom pressed. The Portland campaign alone brought in more revenue than Marcus has generated in his entire tenure. Numbers aren't everything, Patricia replied dismissively. Leadership is about vision, about inspiring confidence in stakeholders. When the board sees Marcus at the quarterly presentations, they see someone who can take this division to the next level. Sarah's contributions are valuable, but she's more of a support role person. Support role. 3 years of groundbreaking work reduced to being someone's assistant. My hand found my phone in my blazer pocket. Almost without thinking, I opened the voice recorder app and pressed record. The red dot pulsed as their conversation continued. Besides, Patricia continued, Sarah doesn't have the networking connections Marcus brings. His fraternity brother works at Microsoft, his golf buddy is a VP at Amazon. Those relationships matter in this business. So we're promoting based on who someone plays golf with now. Tom's voice carried an edge. We're promoting based on total package, Patricia snapped. And Marcus's total package is what this company needs moving forward. Sarah will be fine. She's a team player. She'll support Marcus and help him succeed, just like she's been doing. The conversation continued for another 8 minutes. Patricia outlined her reasoning with clinical precision, Marcus's MBA from Stanford, his connections in the industry, his natural command presence during presentations. She mentioned his confidence in client meetings, his ability to speak the language of senior executives. Not once did she mention my 3 years of consistently exceeding targets. Not once did she acknowledge the Portland campaign success or the retention program I'd built from scratch that had become company standard. It was all about image, about fitting a particular mold I apparently didn't match. Look, Tom, Patricia's voice dropped lower, between you and me, we need someone who looks like leadership material, and that's just not Sarah. The board responds to a certain type of executive presence. Marcus has it, she doesn't. End of story. When their voices finally faded down the hallway, I stopped the recording and stared at my phone screen. 47 seconds into the file, Patricia had said the words that would change everything. We need someone who looks like leadership material, and that's just not Sarah. I saved the file with a timestamp and uploaded it to 3 separate cloud accounts, my personal Google Drive, Dropbox, and a password-protected folder on my home computer. Then I made a backup copy on a USB drive I kept in my purse. I sat in my car for 20 minutes in the parking garage, rain drumming on the roof as I processed what I'd heard. The heater hummed softly while I replayed Patricia's words in my mind. Support role. Not leadership material. Natural command presence, code words I'd heard before, usually directed at women who dared to aim higher than middle management. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Drinks to celebrate? Team bonding? I stared at the message, thinking about how he'd benefited from my mentorship while positioning himself as the natural successor to everything I'd built. How his golf connections and fraternity network mattered more than my proven results. I typed back, rain check. Working late on transition documents. Another lie, but necessary. I wasn't ready to pretend yet. Instead, I started planning my next move, methodically and strategically. If Patricia wanted to play games based on image and connections rather than merit, I'd show her what real strategic thinking looked like. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.